Hi, I'm R.L. Parker, dark fantasy, epic fantasy author, and this is...
Kristina Parker, his editor, and spousal unit.
Oh, and she's come back at me a few times. This feels like C-Spot Run. I'm like,
you need to rewrite this entire paragraph because you got way too C-Spot Run. I'm not a cheerleader. I don't care whose book I'm editing. It can be his. It can be somebody else's. I am not a cheerleader. I am going to tell you if it flows well, if it reads well, and if other people would read it. And I'm pretty darn selective about what I read. So if I tell you the book's good, you're probably going to think it's phenomenal. And, okay, that sounds a little egotistical.
It does indeed.
It does indeed. I have a very broad vocabulary, and I'm not afraid to use it. I had a really interesting conversation today with somebody about how our favorite people to meet are people who mispronounce words. Not because
they learn them through reading.
Because they only see them when they read it. They've never actually heard a word pronounced. And that is very telling of where our language is, where we don't use words like behemoth. Or what was the big one back in the 90s I used to get wrong all the time, which was privy. I used to always say privy because it was a private place.
I said clitch instead of cliche.
Clitch instead of cliche.
I heard the word cliche.
But it didn't register.
When I was reading the book, I was like, what's a clitch?
What's a clitch? No, it's a cliche.
And the internet didn't exist,
right.
So I couldn't go Google it.
So, if you're an aspiring author who has a big vocabulary...
Flex it.
Flex it.
Yeah.
Please, use it. Make a kid look up a word. And then, because if you look it up, then you get the pronunciation too. I mean, these days you can use the dictionary and look up a word, and there's that little microphone speaker doodad, and it'll pronounce it for you. Yep. It's nuts. Technology, it's a beautiful thing.
Can't wait till they do that for my character names.
You better go put those in the dictionary now.
The biggest one that early readers got wrong from Blood of Ravens was Vexter Eliux.
I can't even pronounce that
Vexter Eliux, that's the name of the dragon.
I screwed up Careless all the time.
Yeah.
Careless?
Chirolus, I heard.
Chirolus.
Yeah.
Most of them I can get, but if you've only ever seen it in print, you sound it out in your head, and however way it works is what works. And the problem is that once you mispronounce it once in your head, it sticks that way. You can't change it.
Yep.
I'm dealing with that with the book that I'm reading right now because I have an Ivar and an Enar, and they talk to each other. So I kept pronouncing Enar as Einar in my head, so you'd have Ivar and Einar. And I was like, I can't do that. I gotta reverse this. And I made a conscious effort to pronounce it Enar.
You didn't just nickname one Bob in your head.
Kind of hard to do that with Ivar the Boneless. I mean, come on.
Bob
yes,
the
I read Viking history. So
Bob the Boneless.
Bob the Boneless. Doesn't have the same ring.
Is this another MC Porter?
No, this was the author that I don't particularly like his style, but I like his stories. This is me.
Thankfully, she likes my style and my stories. So.
Well, it works because I've known your style for so long. His writing style is the same as his DM style.
Seat of my pants.
Seat of his pants, but ridiculously descriptive. Not Robert Jordan descriptive. There are not
Stephen King descriptive.
There are not 8 pages about the petals of a flower. However, you can close your eyes and see what he's talking about. And for me, that's important. I want to immerse myself in a story when I'm reading it.
And the same goes for my combat scenes, too.
Combat scenes, too. And there were definitely some times where characters almost got out of character and used some more modern lingo when I was editing, and I came across it, and I was like, no, that's too modern because it's jarring. And it takes you out of the story immediately. And I'd be like, look, I don't care how you got to flex this so that it's just got that edge of medieval tone to it. And there were other times where I was like, dude, you just made a barbarian go flowery and poetic. You can't do that.
The worst things were like a whole chapter that forgot Will L existed.
Where's Will?
He left with them, and then wasn't in any of the battles, and then he shows up at the end. Man, I'm tired.
Well,
like,
so I'm going through, and he's like naming off all of the characters that are there, and I'm like, "Where's Will?
And it was
Where the hell's Will?"
This whole every other scene was like a little comment, like every other word. Where's Will? Where's Will? He's still not here.
He's still not here. What did you do with Will? So he had to go back and like pepper Will in because he was there. We just forgot about
And
him.
he got some good fight scenes out of it.
He got some really good fight scenes out
So,
of it.
but yeah.
But
Well, that was a problem I was dealing with Blood of Ravens was the size of the cast.
your cast was huge.
Because at one point I had two parties traveling together or traveling separately that were going to merge.
Yep.
And I had 6 in one group and 12 in the other. And the worst is when one of those groups that's anywhere north of 4 people sits in a tavern or sits around a campfire talking and keeping everybody included.
Well, and keeping them all in character.
Keeping it all in character and keeping them all straight.
Yep.
And then those were scenes where I'd be like, I forgot Agnar in this conversation. I forgot that Isabel existed here.
Right, yep.
Like,
but, you could have just sent the two of them off together and it would have been okay. But he does do a really good job of giving every character their own tongue, so to speak.
Their own way to speak.
To the point where he can, in some scenes, and he never did it, but he could have dropped who said what. And you could have still sussed out who was who.
For example,
and
if you see a massive wall of quotation text from one character, it's Mordecai.
Yeah.
Every time.
Every time.
That's my me in the world. That's like, I'm a talker, he's a talker.
Yep. So you've got that going for you. And as a D&D player, when you're reading a book like that and you're watching these different sets of people converge, you kind of know what's happening. You're like, there's a DM pulling the strings of this guy and that guy over there, and this girl's going to go that way. And
then you're getting close and you're like, somebody's going to die.
Someone's got to die. This party's too big. But even with Dusk, when I was editing Dusk, there is a point where everybody converges because that's how D&D works. You don't all start off in the same bloody tavern. You're all coming from different small towns.
Well, and that's part of what my problem was with Dusk and why it became so big. Because my target for Dusk, like I said in the Dusk video, was going to be 50,000 words. And I was going to start it there. The problem was that then you're forced into all of these characters constantly telling people how they ended up there.
Exactly.
Like, instead of exposition, let me write it and show not tell.
Show not tell.
And the next thing you know, show not tell turns into 80,000 extra words.
Well, and yeah, when we were talking about him starting Dusk, he was like, I'm gonna keep it to like 50,000 words, and I went, good luck with that.
I was like,
is that a personal challenge?
I'm like, I did it with Sissy.
But that story was tellable because it only had 4 characters.
Well, one main cast, really.
Yeah, one main cast,
Silkara.
and you killed half of them off. So, like, that one was pretty easy. I knew Dusk wasn't going to be that easy, even though I didn't actually know the premise of Dusk before he started writing.
She knew if I was dealing with more than one character, it was going to blow up.
Exactly. If he's dealing with more than one character and they're in different parts meeting up at different times, it's going to blow up. It's just going to, But I remember when I was editing Dusk, I should say, there's no we. He had an alpha reader that was reading at the same time that I was editing. So she would get to a point, and sometimes I would come in behind her and do edits, and she'd go back and reread. And sometimes I was ahead of her, so she would get to see my comments instead of the other way around. And I remember getting to a point where everybody had converged, and because he really likes it when I leave comments and feedback as opposed to get rid of this comma and this can be one sentence and please, dear God, stop using the word shadow or structure. And I had just put this one little comment that said, and the party is joined. And she thought that was absolutely hilarious because I had pointed out in D&D terms what had just happened.
Yeah. And she messaged me on the alpha reader messaged me on Discord. She was doing it almost every day to let me know where she finished off, and she's like, "Avengers Assemble."
Yep. And it was interesting for me because she left really lengthy feedback at the end of like every chapter.
Every chapter.
So I would, read the chapter, and then, when you're in Google Drive, all the comments are off to the right, and there would be this wall of text. And I'd be like, ooh, I should read what she had to say.
What is that alarm?
It's the
stove. It's the stove.
We got the oven running a cleaning cycle while we do this, and it's singing to us to let us know that it's done.
I'm going to turn this fireplace off.
Please do, because my back is sweating. But usually prior to dusk when I was editing, it was just me and the document. So I didn't have to worry about changing things. And I don't, when I say changing things, I do not run, you go ahead. I do not run in editing mode. I run in suggestion mode. And the reason why is because I don't want to actually change things without his knowledge. I want him to go through and realize the things that I'm changing and ask questions as to why if needed, or go, oh yeah, okay.
Well, and also
because it makes him a better writer for every book.
And my writing is in Scrivener too, so I also have to take whatever she suggested and put it there.
Right. He has to change it in 2 places. So it's a different perspective than what a typical editor would do. I mean, it's the same concept as like an editor in the 80s who would read through a book or a manifesto almost. Manuscript. There you go. That's the word.
Wow. Manifesto.
Manifesto. Ha.
Taking over the world.
Taking over the world. What are we doing tonight, brain? But they would now I can't get it out of my head. It's going to be a manifesto forever. They would read through a manuscript, and you would get it back in the mail with like Post-it notes all over it, and that was the extent of their editing.
You send it to them, with extra spacing between each line, and they'll highlight and write in the margins.
But you can do that in Google Drive, and it's essentially the same thing.
So.
But you could do it real time. So like I could do 3 chapters on a Saturday afternoon, and by the time I came back to it on Sunday, he had already implemented changes that he wanted to change.
Yep.
Which was nice and bad at the same time, because
you would lose track.
I would lose track of where the heck I was.
My approach for beta readers is generally anybody that has access to it. So I write in Scrivener, I export it to Google Doc or to Word Doc when I'm ready. I do a little bit of formatting there just to make it easier to follow. Structurally, and I will take the headings and turn them into bookmarks for every chapter. And at that point, I then import it into Google Drive, and I will create a separate copy for every person that has access to it. So for Blood Ravens, I had a proofreader or alpha reader. He had his own Google Doc. You had your own Google Doc. All the beta readers eventually had their own Google Docs. Now with Sissy, it was so small and so short, I didn't do beta readers. But
you did. You had a couple.
No, I had 1 or 2, but I didn't wait for them. I used them as advanced readers.
Okay.
So they were ARCs. They were there to do reviews, and only one of them posted reviews. So that was a win. And then with Dusk, I had somebody I'd met at a convention who.
Gosh, she fangirl.
Well,
Kim, I love you, but you fangirl.
Spitting image of Lila. So I had been talking with my artist J.K. Peevahouse about different people that might look like my characters so he could do sketches. And one of the characters we couldn't find a good example of was Lila. She's a short, slightly rotund black woman. And we couldn't find any celebrities that looked like her. And I was scrambling.
And
here goes this person that I, would learn her name is Kimyona, but she's walking by the table and I'm like, oh my God, it's Lila! Top of my lungs, like everybody in that end of the hall at the convention heard me. And
I was
John turned, she turned with, well, what? And I told her what was going on. I apologized. And then I'm like, I really need you to read this scene from my book. And you'll know why I was so excited to find you. And I handed her the kobold scene. From the beginning of Blood Ravens.
Well, and that's about that time she was reading when I walked over, because I heard him scream, it's Lila, because I was only 3 tables away, vending with my own stuff. And I was like, okay, I need to go see why my husband is screaming at women over here. So I go, strutting over, and she's head down, and she's this little thing. Now, I'm 5'11", so there's not very many people who are not little to me.
She's like 5'1".
And she's little. She's adorable. She's little.
She looks up and you...
And this one goes, Lila. And she looks up and I went, oh my God. Yeah. and John was like, I think that's 3 unanimous. That's Lila. Okay, now I got a mental image.
And then she read the scene and she goes, yeah, I can be Lila. and ended up buying a copy of both of the books I had at the time, Bathing Blood of Ravens and Sissy. She went home and read both. She messaged me back, and she's gushing about them. And I'm like, well, I've got Dusk coming up, and I need an alpha reader. And she's like, well, what's an alpha reader? In fact, no, I posted on Instagram because I didn't want to message her directly.
Hush.
It's a stove.
It's not a stove, it's Zach.
Glenda. Saddle.
No one's afraid of a 6-pound dog.
So
actually, everyone's afraid of a 6-pound dog.
I did a general message on Instagram because I wasn't sure she would be amicable to the idea. And she messaged me and said, I have to be involved. What's an alpha reader? And so I went through what my perspective of an alpha reader was. And then I talked to her and I talked to my wife about, hey, what if we did a joint document to make it easier for me to do the exports every night, but then you two can play off of each other in comments. Mm-hmm. Because this is all, this whole story is set in unpaved territory for me.
Yep.
So I need much more frequent feedback.
Well, and it was good for you because Kim fangirls a little bit, and that's okay. He needs that, and that's not who I am. He needs I don't want to say he needs the constant accolades, but he does need to know what somebody thinks.
I need to know what works and what doesn't.
What works and what doesn't. Oh goodness.
Settle down.
Hush. He wants to know what works and what doesn't from chapter to chapter. And I can't give him that. She
doesn't work that way.
I don't work that way. I need to read the whole book, and then I'll come to you and I'll gush. Or I'll be like, all right, there's like 8 scenes in here. They're all marked out. I need you to expand on those things.
Yeah.
Because from an editor standpoint, it's less important that I like your book and more important that it flows well for a reader. However, the caveat for me editing for anybody is if I don't like it within the first chapter, I'm not going to charge you, but I'm giving it back. Because, A, I don't want to slog through a book that I don't really want to read. But B, the more I don't want to read it, the more brutal I'm going to be. And I'm not real good at pulling my punches.
Yeah.
I can be downright mean. And I know this about myself. And if you're a first-time author who's handing me your baby, I don't want to be mean to you. I want you to have an editor that actually wants to enjoy your story while giving you the service that you need. And that's not always going to be me, and I accept that. Yep. I'm not a cheerleader. If you're looking for somebody who is unbiased and is not just going to tell you that your piece is beautiful, but is going to say, this is a really good concept, maybe expand here, here, and here, and then come back to me. Or go, hey, you know what, I read your first 4 chapters, and I only found a couple of things, so let's work a deal, and I'll read the rest of it and get you edited, and then you'll be ready to go to beta.
Yep.
Because I am not one of those editors that is going to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth for 6 months. If you have finished your book, I will edit it, and then...
So, final thing I want to talk about then. So after the beta readers got done with Dusk, I told you what their comment was, what their feedback was. We'll ignore that one person. There's a thing. We'll make another video. No, let's make a different video about that because that's going to be another 1-hour conversation.
Are we up to 2 now?
We're close. And this is going to be a multi-parter, I'm sure. With Dusk, the overarching feedback that I got, the theme of the feedback was generally add more. Add more. I want more about the world. I want more about this character. I want more about what this type of elf is. I want more about this. Because I wanted to write a standalone book that could be read by itself without my other 2, but I approached it with this mindset of subconsciously people have read my books, so I don't have to dive into detail. And then she edited that way too, to a point where there were some details that she was just accepting of that. And
then there was somewhere I was like,
but there were areas where she didn't key in on the need either.
Right.
And we needed that outside opinion. So I don't work with family and friends as betas. I get people that are objective. Some of them I've known for a while, but I don't associate with and socialize with every day. So they don't owe me anything. So I sent it out. I got the feedback, and predominantly the feedback was, please add more. So
and it was mostly add more about the world and the political structure and how things came to be. And
in our conversation, she said, I don't think you need that much, but do what you feel is right. And so I went and I did it. I handed it back to you. And what do you remember? What the last comment you made at the end of the book the second time through, after that was incorporated? You said, "I didn't think you could make it better, but you did." Congratulations.
So, yeah. It did. Yeah, it did flow. It was more finessed on the second read through. But of course, that was also after my first round of edits. After Kim Yona had done her alpha reading and had asked for certain things. And then the beta readers had come in and asked for certain things.
And it was a brand new chapter 1, a totally rewritten chapter 2.
The whole timeline actually ended up shifting a little bit. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I didn't think it really needed to be futz with a whole lot. But yeah, this is it. This is Dusk. It's done. You know, yep. Print. Like, we're done.
All right, so thank you guys for staying with us if you watched the whole thing. I'm sure by the time this uploads, it's going to be a multi-part. Probably. Because it's probably close to 2 hours. I haven't checked the time. So I'll do this in half-hour chunks. And I guess we'll do this again sometime. This was fun.
Sure. No, it was fun. I'm just tired.
All right.